If you want to ignite your guitar playing, here are 3 crucial things. Number 1, inspiration. You've got to go to the source. Number 2, the foundation. Knowing the basics inside out means you can make great music. Number 3, imitation. If you learn a couple of licks really well, then you can assimilate those ideas into your own playing style. Today, we're diving into 3 powerful techniques that are going to really accelerate your blues guitar playing and take things to the next level. So whether you're a beginner or advanced, stick around till the end because we can jam and put this all together. And you know, sometimes you pick up your guitar and you just feel kind of uninspired and you're just kind of going through the motions. So I'm going to give you a cure for that. One of the best things you can do if you really want to get inspired is to look outside of just the guitar, because other instruments or the human voice, that can be some of the most inspiring stuff. And a lot of players talk about that. If you take a lot of blues playing, right, a lot of blues has its roots in the harmonica. If you think about the great harmonica players like Sonnt Boy Williamson or Little Walter, just their playing is so amazing. Take a listen here. This is Little Walter. Listen to the feel of that, the way he's kind of double timing it and the way he's kind of bending those notes. It sounds so cool, right? Let's take that as inspiration. I'm not going to try and make my guitar sound like a harmonica, but I'm just going to take some ideas from what he's playing. Like, this is a blues in B, right? So right there, you can see he's doing this kind of double timing thing. Just that idea of that kind of like... And that's just, you could take that and play your basic kind of pentatonic licks and you just kind of double up each note. So what you do there is before you hit the note, you do a little pickup into the note and it gives that swing. So it just has a cool sound there. And then even if you think about the resonance on the harmonica is so interesting because you can hear the kind of the notes kind of rubbing against each other and blending into each other. And you can kind of mimic that on the guitar a little bit. You can kind of like bend into those notes and ornament those melodies. Like, so instead of just going, you go, you know, and I might never have thought to play a lick like that where you kind of bend into the second, or maybe I'd play it. So there's a lot of cool sounds on the harmonica. I mean, those little trills. And, you know, it doesn't sound exactly like a harmonica, but just the idea, it just makes you think about the licks in a different way. So you got those expressive kind of bends, and you can just try and kind of recreate that sound. Another thing you hear a lot of players talk about is trying to emulate the sound of a vocal. When you're just playing guitar licks, you might kind of think almost one-dimensionally, where you kind of pick every note and it all kind of sounds very even sounding. But with vocals, there's often melodies within melodies. You know, say on the song The Sky is Crying, let's listen to Albert King playing it. This is amazing right here.
It's called The Sky is Crying.
So it's really good to learn a song like that. Like, now one of the interesting things about a song like The Sky is Crying, right? It's a classic blues, right? And this is one of the songs you can have the most fun with because it's a slow blues. And with a slow blues, slow blues is like a magical kind of song because it's a combination of fast and slow and very dynamic and very explosive as well, right? And 12/8 blues is really interesting because it's a compound time signature, which means there's like 2 different rhythms kind of going on at the same time. So it's like a very slow blues. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. 1, 2, And it's so slow, you can barely kind of like keep up with it. And it's really easy to kind of get lost. But if you look within that beat, there's another rhythm going on, which is groups of 3/8 notes. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, which is a much faster rhythm, right? So it's 12/8 notes. That's what's called 12/8. But there's 4 groups of them. So basically you've got 1, 2, okay, and if you kind of get that subdivision within the beat, it's much easier to play in time, which is really essential for these kinds of songs. So that's the basic idea with a 12/8 blues. And there's so many great songs that use that kind of formula. But once you've got that down, it's kind of fun to kind of play around with it a little bit more, and you can add some color to that. So what I'm going to show you here, if you look on the screen, is you can do these kind of cool like T-Bone Walker style chords where instead of just playing a regular C chord like that or a C7, you can play these T-Bone ninths. And they're these infinitely slidable chords. And they look like a kind of a diminished chord, like a half diminished chord. But it's just basically fret 7, 8, 7, 8 like that. So it's a C9 chord. And you can kind of slide these chords around like this. And they have a great sound, right? So you can use that chord. So that's a C9. And then F9. And then a lot of times in blues, you'll have these little walk-ups. And here's a cool little walk-up you can do where you go C, you kind of walk up the scale, D minor, C over E, and then an augmented. So it's basically walking up to the next chord. So it's got a beautiful sound there. And then back to the C9. And then you've got the turnaround at the end where you've got the G9. The F9, C9, and then here's a little kind of chordal turnaround where you're going to go C9, F9, F sharp diminished, back to C, and then this kind of chromatic, you do this little chromatic thing at the end, which happens a lot in blues. So let's try playing around with those chords. And when you're playing those kind of weird chords, part of the trick is they're passing chords, right? So if you're doing something like going, what you want to do is you don't want to kind of like, that's a color chord that you don't want to emphasize it too much. You don't want to go, well, you could do that. It would sound kind of cool actually, but you got to be careful doing that because it can kind of sound ugly too. So you want to be more like, ways you can treat these kind of strange chords is you can play them staccato, or you can play them a little bit softer, or you can play them just for one beat or two beats. So for example, you can play the F9 and just play one beat on the F sharp. So it's a passing chord. And that same exact principle applies when you're actually soloing. Like a really good way to think of like playing, if you want to go outside the pentatonic scale, is you can use all these kind of like diminished sounds and augmented sounds and things like that. Rather than thinking of them as scales, think of them as chords, but then you play them as arpeggios. And then all of a sudden, it just sounds a lot more musical. So if I was playing a blues in C, go down the scale, just by thinking of them, diminished sounds in there, by thinking of them more like passing chords, rather than throwing in a diminished scale or something. Anyway, so if you take this song, The Sky is Crying, what you can do is take some of these ideas, and particularly with vocal phrasing, it's call and response. So if you look at The Sky is Crying, if you look at the Stevie Ray Vaughan version, he'll do these licks like... So it's got this vocal-like quality where it's like, which sounds like he's speaking. It's like, so that's a great lick to practice there. And if you look at that lick, the phrasing of it, so it's kind of like 1, 2, 3, 1. So the rhythm almost takes you by surprise. 1, 2, 3, 1. And how he does it, Albert King would use his thumb, and Stevie would basically kind of pluck the strings to get that. Pluck the strings to get that kind of whining sound. And a lot of that lick is based around the Albert box, which is the upper extension of the blues box. So if you've got your regular blues box here, right? All you've got to do is go up here, just above the blues box. There's this little mini box here. And that's where all these kind of cool... And those notes right there is basically what you're doing is you're bending between, there's an infinite amount of bends between the fourth, the flat 5, and the fifth of the scale. So basically, if you're in C, here's the root, second, third, fourth is right there. So you're bending up to the flat 5, and then to the perfect fifth. And there's a million different kind of micro bends between those two. People like Albert King were masters of just finding all those notes between the cracks. So that's a great lick to practice there. 2, 3, 1. And he does again. 1, 2, 3. That's a classic little thing there. That's leading to the 4 chord.